The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Straight ahead on this edition of Perspectives, we break down the government shutdown as well as the debt ceiling crisis. That's front and center on this edition of Perspectives with yours truly, Darren Jaime.
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life. What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I'm Darren Jaime. We invite you to stay connected to the show. We ask that you be socially active. You catch us on our social networking sites. You can hit us up on perspectives@bronxnet.org. That's our email address, as well as being able to catch us on our website, www.bronxnet.org/perspectives. Then you hit us up on Facebook and Twitter, and there you'll be able to find out about some past episodes of this show, comment on what you see and maybe what you'd like to see, and if we can, we'll bring it to you right here. Coming up front and center on this edition of Perspectives, we are talking about the government shutdown that continues with millions of Americans hanging in limbo with the possible debt ceiling crisis. Our guest in studio is someone who's very familiar with what's going on in Washington. Brandon Bryce, who is a columnist for the Washington Times Communities, who is here with us, and he's sharing with us. He's been no stranger to us here at the show. And so first of all, let's talk about this here. Government shutdown. Right. President Barack Obama very intentional in saying, all right, the House and the Senate have to work this out. From your perspective, how do you see this playing out?
Well, I think the first issue is that President Obama should have been the one to initially move this grand bargain forward. The fact that it's fallen in the hands of Senator Harry Reid and Senator Mitch McConnell now puts it in a total different ballpark. I think the person that with the most to lose, sadly, is Senator McConnell, because there's two ways where he can approach this. He can approach this as simply telling the American people, look, we have to pay our bills on time and we're not budging. Or he can look at it from the political perspective and actually say, listen, if I'm the Senate minority leader on top of issues dealing with Speaker John Boehner, I've got to look forward to 2014 and 2016 because these could be pressing issues that could move forward if there isn't a bargain by November 1st. And let me be clear, one of the biggest things that we're talking about is not only the government paying its bills on time, but also we have a debt lining from international investors that are saying, wait a minute, if these guys can't pay their bills on time, why should we reinvest in the United States?
Obviously, a huge problem for America, and it's a black eye for everybody, right. Admittedly. Who will look the worst in all of this?
Well, it's interesting. You would think that, the buck stopping at the presidential office, that Obama would look bad. His numbers actually haven't changed. I think the people with the biggest sense to lose are the Republican Party. I think one of the smarter things politically, if you're Obama, was to immediately blame it on the Republicans. Now, Republicans are targeted with actually defining what is the debt ceiling and actually telling those groups, such as the Tea Party, why it's important to actually cut some kind of bargain to move folks forward. And let me be clear. The last time I checked, Con Edison wasn't accepting IOUs. You've got 800,000 people out of work. Now the question is, do you move forward or do you play politics?
When the government shut down in its initial stages, we knew that those persons affected by the war and our veterans would not be compensated. An independent person has to come out and say, listen, you know what? I'll take care of our troops. You gotta say at some juncture, this is horrible, that the government who sent you out to war can't take care of our troops, and now we've got independent investors saying, I'll take care of our America's troops.
Well, one of the telling things with this entire government shutdown is that out of those 800,000 people who actually are not collecting a paycheck, Congress is still collecting a check. I think that's very telling to say, well, wait a minute. You would think the Good Samaritan thing to do to say is say, wait a minute, if my workers aren't getting paid, perhaps I should forfeit my check. No congressman has spoken about not getting paid. And I think those are going to begin to start to be the telling issues after November 1st when folks can't pay their bills on time. Remember, politics is local. And little things like not being able to pay your bills on time, not being able to simply pay your rent, that can turn an election around.
When you look at the debt ceiling crisis, how is America affected by the debt ceiling crisis? For somebody who's just watching, because I hear a lot about the debt ceiling, I don't know exactly what it means.
Right.
What would it mean for America if we crash the ceiling?
Well, it goes back to what I just mentioned about little things like not being able to pay your bills on time, looking at the credit market in terms of investment. It affects job growth. Taxes have to be increased. Who does that hurt? Specifically, African-American and Latino minority business owners, because now they've got to decide, do I hire another person or do I simply pay another tax? And so I think when you're talking about the economy, and I think this is what the Treasury Secretary Lou is saying, you guys have got to come up with a deal or this could be extremely more than we've bitten off to chew. Also, I think this goes back to Speaker Boehner. I think he's got to make the ultimate decision now that it's back. I think the bill is back in the House. He's got to decide, do I want to continue being Speaker, which I'm sure most of us would like to be, or do I actually want to come up with a bargain and risk losing my seat because of Tea Party influence? And
when you look at the Tea Party influence, how heavy is that right now?
Oh, it's extremely heavy. And to an extent, they do have a message. They do have a reason to campaign against outrageous government spending, but they also have to understand that, listen, a deal has to be cut either way it is. And I think this is where leadership comes in. We haven't seen it in the presidency. Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid, I think, did as much as they can do. Now it falls on Boehner. He's got to make the ultimate decision.
But does this also give concern to the Republican Party, given the fact that you have this Tea Party and then
Right.
you have your other branch of the Republican Party, the two factions definitely not seeing eye to eye. At the end of all of this, some people are saying, listen, just the name Republican is not good right now.
You know, it's interesting. I think what made somebody like Reagan a great leader is that he was able to cut a deal with then Democratic Speaker Tip O'Neill. And many, even members of his own party said, you know, is this guy crazy? What is he doing? But I think he understood sometimes in order to move back, you got to go back 3 spaces. Excuse me, in order to move forward, you have to go back 3 spaces. And I think what we're seeing now is, you know, my question is, where's the leadership in Washington on both sides? We haven't seen it in the presidency. We've seen it because we've had to see it with with Senator Harry Reid and Senator Mitch McConnell. And now the big question is, you know, will Speaker Boehner step up and cut a deal and take the lead and risk losing his seat? And I think it's not only just on Speaker Boehner, but I think most folks in Washington, sadly, would rather maintain their political office than to do what's right.
Got to take a quick break, continue our conversation talking about the government shutdown and the debt ceiling crisis. More about President Obama when we return right here on Perspectives. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
All right, give me a spot. You know my motto, safety first.
They could be dangerous. I think we should call animal control.
Animal control?
To be safe.
Don't worry.
Just...
I got this. It's a new motto.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Look at me. Hey.
Raymond, look at Mommy.
Maybe the light hurts his eyes.
Maybe she's just not hungry. Maybe he can't hear us. Maybe we're not stimulating him enough. Maybe it's a phase.
Avoiding eye contact is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.
I don't know what's happening. Start a new chat. What did I do? Okay. Wow. That is so weird.
Hey! Hi!
Oh my gosh. Hi! God, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm so nervous. Gia, you're so big. Come closer to the camera. Wait, now you're in my face. That was so good.
Being a dad can be tough.
No. What do you mean she's not coming?
When's the fairy princess coming?
Any minute now.
But when you're willing to do anything,
It is I, Groogs Zinkerbell. Okay, time for cake.
it's always worth it.
I know it's really you, Drew. I'm just pretending for the other kids.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Welcome back to Perspectives. Darren Hyman here with you. We're continuing our conversation talking about the government shutdown. Brandon Bryce, our guest in studio. And as we look going forward to the midterm elections, how much of what we see taking place this week and through this shutdown will play out in midterm elections, do you feel?
You know, I can answer that question if by November 1st. I think it's really going to depend on is a deal cut, who gets the credit for cutting the deal, and who resists cutting the deal. And I think if Republicans, who sadly are pretty much their hands are the ones being forced now to come up with a deal or come up with a solution. And let's be clear, they're not cutting necessarily a budget, they're cutting a program. This all stems back to Obamacare. Ted Cruz, as you know, has kind of been the frontliner being against Obamacare. But I think the number one question in America from the right is, okay, well, if we get rid of Obamacare, then what? And I think that question hasn't been answered. And so now it's kind of like, you know, do we go with the devil that we know or the devil that we don't know? So I think the midterm election, specifically 2014, being that it's right around the corner, that's going to be decided in the next couple of weeks. The 2016 race, I think, also is an interesting one to discuss because if we're looking at 2016, now we're looking at particular presidential candidates. If you're Chris Christie in New Jersey, who's actually cut a budget, who's actually brought a grand bargain in a heavy Democratic state, you're looking real good right now because folks are saying, well, wait a minute, if he did it of all places, New Jersey, he can do it nationally.
And then on the Democratic side, we haven't heard it. We've heard her name. She hasn't said her name, but everybody's leaning to Hillary Clinton.
You know, it's interesting. I think right now, if you're a Democrat, you're kind of on easy street. I think Hillary Clinton definitely is going to be one of the front runners. The problem is, and I think it's going to come back to, and I think this brings up a very interesting point about states' rights and looking specifically at who actually has the experience to get things done. We can't necessarily say Hillary Clinton has done that. You know, she's never been in any form of executive office. And I think right now with the challenges that we have, cutting budgets, taking leadership, managing specific budgets as it relates to the federal government, the state government, she doesn't really have a
But Secretary of State
race.
has to count for something.
Well, yeah, it accounts for 4 dead Benghazi U.S. ambassadors that really never got discussed and got talked about. And I think that for 2016 is going to come back to actually haunt Hillary Clinton's candidacy.
So you think that that's going to be the determining factor for her?
I think the fact that it was not handled appropriately, it really wasn't discussed. She left, I think it was a few weeks after that particular post. I think that's going to come back up in that debate as it relates to foreign policy.
So when you look at the 2016 map, what names immediately come to mind for you?
Well, if you're on the Democratic side, I think obviously Hillary Clinton's a front runner. I think Senator Warner out of Virginia is a very attractive candidate, being that he's not only from Virginia, but he's a Democrat that's conservative and is pro-business. I think that's going to be very attractive. You know, I also think that if you're on the Republican side, you know, you're looking at a Chris Christie, you're looking at a Nikki Haley out of South Carolina, which is a critical state when it comes to elections. You know, even though he's a Canadian, you know, he's a partial citizen. Some folks are still gunning for Ted Cruz. I think he's leading the charge. I think that's smart.
And bringing a Latino to the ticket has been what's been said for the Republican Party to even ensure possible a better voter turnout on their behalf.
You know, it's interesting. I think what we've seen in past elections, just looking at John McCain in 2008 and Mitt Romney in 2012, is that it's not necessarily about playing politics. It's about who do people trust. And I think people are going to look at who's actually done the work. We haven't seen the work done in 2008 under Obama. We didn't see it in 2012 in terms of really going after the budget. Remember the bailout deal? That went awry. And so the fact that we're saying, well, wait a minute, is it time to put someone in who can actually get things done? And so that's why I say, if you're the Republican Party, your biggest asset, I think right now, is Chris Christie. The problem is not going to be Democrats with Chris Christie. It's going to be Republicans. And it's going to be those Republicans who say this guy is too much of a rhino, regardless of the fact that he can get things done.
Look at 2016. Some people are not optimistic whatsoever. When we understood that the Republican agenda was pretty much to make President Barack Obama, a one-term president, that was publicly said. That was done. A large fight to really get anything done. The fact the government has not been able to get anything done. If it were to change parties and to change hands, would we see the same from the Democratic side, do you believe, that it would be this all-out assault not to allow a president to be successful and really get nothing done? Because really, it's hard to look at Washington and say something's been accomplished, because the reality is not much has been accomplished.
You know, it's interesting. I think it even stems back further than that, to Obama's first 100 days. If I had been advising the president, I would have said, you know, forget health care right now. You have an economy to deal with. And let's be clear, one of the biggest assets about even having a job is your health insurance. When that's gone, people fear that. And so I think the fact that the president went directly after health care, as opposed to going to dealing with the economy, focusing on job growth, reeling the Republicans in to say, listen, you know, I need something and I can award you with something. It's a negotiation deal. The fact that the president didn't do that, I think, set the tone down from day one.
So what do we see things happening over the near future? We know that the government shutdown as a present is still going on. Debt ceiling going to go down to the possible limit. Let's move past this. Let's say the government shutdown is taken care of, debt ceiling is taken care of. What can we foresee in the near future?
I think the next big topic is going to be, I'd have to say, immigration reform. It's kind of taken a step back. But I think the thing about immigration reform that no one's talking about is right now STEM education is critical. And when you're talking about you know, the majority of individuals who are coming over here learning science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, they're not the typical African Americans or even white Americans. It's a lot of your Asian Americans who are coming over, a lot of your Indian Americans. So the immigration reform is a much critical issue because the jobs are here. The question is, do you have qualified Americans who can do those tech jobs? And if you can't, what's the solution? Immigration reform. And it's going to be a very interesting topic that we're not just talking about the Hispanics who come from California and the southern states, but we're talking about immigrants from all over the world who are coming over here who are actually contributing to our everyday society, everyday operations.
And when you look at 2016, you look at the fact that this is a possibility immigration could hit, but the question of a passage and getting that passed, I think many people are not optimistic about the fact. If you look at healthcare and you see where we are with healthcare right now and the possibility of that even being repealed or the fight to get it repealed, the question remains, are we going to be able to see a passage with immigration in the Obama administration?
Well, here's the issue. I don't think Obama will take that on under his presidency. I think the 2016, whoever becomes president, the next president, that is going to be their issue. The challenge for Republicans is you can't oppose immigration, because if you do, you'll lose the Hispanic vote, the immigrant vote for the next 50 years. So I think Republicans are going to be forced to support or even get out early on the issue to support immigration, a comprehensive immigration reform.
Do we see more Republicans moving to the middle of the line?
Absolutely. I think if the party wants to sustain itself, it's going to be forced to.
And as far as Democrats are concerned?
You know, I think with Democrats, folks have, in many cases, the American public has recognized that, you know, Democrat officials in Washington really have not, they really haven't moved the ball on many issues. You know, right now the president's been in since 2008, and I think a total of, I think it was 5 to 6 bills have been passed. When he had a supermajority coming in, those are the questions that people begin to ask. And so I think they could have done more. But I think 2016, at the rate we're going, with the right conservative candidate, is pretty much guaranteed to go back to a Republican.
The tenor of Washington has tremendously changed. I look now and you see, you know, the breach of quote unquote White House security. And then you see the DC Navy Yard shooting. I was explaining to somebody, these are incidents that you would see maybe once every 20 years occur in Washington, D.C. They're happening simultaneously within weeks. What's different now?
Well, what's different is you have a government that's simply not working. You have a government that many people have lost confidence in. I mean, right now, the national approval rating of Congress, I think, is under 11%. You have a Washington that, if this is not resolved by November 1st, more people are going to lose their job. More people are going to lose their homes. More people are going to lose their energy. People don't take that too well. And it's not so much an issue of class warfare, it's an issue of getting something done in Washington. In the last 10 years, we haven't seen much movement in D.C.
Do we see any coming anytime soon?
After 2016.
After 2016.
Hopefully in 2 weeks.
Right. I mean, well, I think, definitely it has to. It has to occur. Do you think that politicians in Washington really get it that most of America looks at them as crazy and out of touch?
Well, the thing is, you have to be. I won't say you have to be somewhat crazy, but I think politicians should only serve their constituents and really look at putting the people first. Sadly, as we were discussing, when many people get these jobs, get these perks, if you're speaker, the speaker's chamber is awesome. And so the opportunity to be there is a privilege, but also the opportunity to serve is while you're there. And so I think many politicians, sadly, whether it's the White House, whether it's the speakership, they forget why they're there. And I think anytime you've got, an 8% unemployment rate nationally in the African-American community, you've got almost double digits, 16, 17%. Your first priority is your constituents. It's not yourself.
So when you look at that, that there's going to be I think that people have to look at why they're really there. Unfortunately, I don't think that many people really look at why they're really there. They look at who's there with them as to why they're really there, and you get a lot of what you get. I think what America was attracted to in the Barack Obama candidacy was not the fact that he was an African American, but the fact that he was actually sitting there and actually talking about change. Who do we see coming down the line as potential change agents?
Well, like I mentioned, and not to toot Christie's horn, but I think he has done wonders in the state of New Jersey, being that it was the state of New Jersey. I mean, this is a place that had heavy taxation. Businesses and corporations were leaving. Crime was at an all-time high. Education was at its lowest. Trenton, people had lost faith in Trenton, 10, 15 years ago. And this is a guy who came back and reformed it in one term. So I think most people are saying, well, wait a minute, if he can do that in a heavy blue state like New Jersey, he can do that nationally.
We will continue to follow that one.
All right.
Brandon Bryce here with us, and we'll take a quick break and get some final comments when we return right after this.
Barry, time is running out. According to my calculations, 1 in 5 kids in America struggles with hunger. How can so many children face hunger when there's more than enough food to feed them all? You're right, Barry. We can help solve hunger by teaming up with Feeding America to get food to hungry kids in communities across the country.
Help Flint and the Feeding America network of food banks get food to the people who need it in your community. Find your local Feeding America food bank at feedingamerica.org/hunger.
Together, we're Feeding America.
A single ember from a wildfire can travel over a mile. That ember can ignite and destroy your home or community. You can't control where that ember will land. Only what happens before it does. Visit fireadapted.org to learn how you can help protect your community from wildfires.
NFC, AFC, offensive linemen, defensive tackles, quarterbacks, and cornerbacks are all working with United Way for a million little reasons. The kids of our communities. To ensure their academic success all the way to graduation day. You see, it takes about 12 years to create a graduate, but it takes the same time to create a dropout. And the difference between a kid becoming one or the other could be a professional athlete, or it could be you. Studies show the earlier we get to kids, the better their chances. So become a United Way volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor, and make a difference in the life of a child, for the life of that child.
Give. Advocate.
Volunteer. Live united. Join your favorite NFL players. Take the pledge. Go to unitedway.org.
Continuing our conversation, talking about the government shutdown news in Washington, D.C. We're pleased to be joined by Brandon Bryce, who's been our guest throughout the course of the show. Turning our attention to Washington and absent the government shutdown, absent the debt ceiling crisis, absent 2016, looking to the forefront. I mean, there's a lot of stuff right there. That's a lot to deal with as a whole. But give us a little bit more insight of Washington as to what do you think some of the other hot button issues are. We talked about immigration. Anything else?
Right. Well, I think one of the things is, this Syria case, I think, kind of took a back burner to the government shutdown. I think really looking at, how do we, is it time for America to become almost like an isolationist state? Why are we increasing any form of conflict with the Middle East when right now, I mean, thanks to the president, we do not have many allies in the Middle East anymore. We lost Syria, we lost to an extent Tunisia, Libya, Egypt right now is not necessarily, the Muslim Brotherhood has actually taken over that issue. And so I think in the upcoming months, after we get done with the government shutdown, we're going to have to revert back to building our foreign alliances in the Middle East and looking at Syria as being a possible ally in the future. I think one of the issues we have with Syria right now is that through Bashar Assad, there was the chemical nuke of his own people. And I think America's going to come to a time when we've got to say we cannot police the world. We can offer aid, we can create sanctions, but at the end of the day, America has to become its own priority.
When we look at 2016 and you see the this presidential race coming to the forefront, how much is foreign policy, international politics going to weigh in on the American voter? Because some people give it a lot of weight. Some people say no weight at all, considering the fact of the economy and jobs.
Well, I think jobs will be the number one issue, as it always tends to be. Many people, unfortunately, they don't understand the issues that are going on abroad. And it's hard to understand that when you can't eat at night. It's hard to understand that when you can't pay your bills on time. And so I think judging on what happens in the upcoming weeks, the economy and really getting people back to work is going to play a major role. Let's think, it's been 8 years and we've teetered, according to the Department of Bureau of Labor Statistics, that we've been at about 8 to 9% unemployment. That number hasn't changed. And it's gotten worse in minority communities. And so I think before you can even talk about Syria or Iran or North Korea, you've got to talk about Harlem, Brooklyn, and the Bronx, getting those folks back to work. And I think those are going to be the number one issues moving forward for 2014 and especially 2016.
Midterm elections, it's still too early to tell who's going to come out smelling like roses, huh?
I think it's too early, but I think, right now is the time if you want to run for president, now's the time to show your face. And I think that's why you're seeing the Rand Pauls and Rand Paul, and the Ted Cruzes that are out there promoting themselves. But I think ultimately it's going to come back to the work. And I think there's only one particular governor who has actually said, I've done it before and I can do it in the future.
And that is
Chris Christie.
How can we not forget? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brandon, so if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
WashingtonTimes.com, Brandon Bryce.
All righty.
All right.
Brandon Bryce has been our guest here on Perspectives. We thank him for joining us, and we thank you for joining us, too. Now, to find out more information about the show, we encourage you to hit those social networking sites. You can share your comments, your thoughts, and even your questions for either Brandon or myself, and we'll address them in an upcoming show. For all of us here in the Center Perspectives, we thank you for watching. Until the next time we meet, stay safe and share your perspective with somebody else. It just might make a difference in their life. I'm Darren Jaime saying take care and God bless.
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective, which shines a light. Cause it might make a difference.